You always thought the exhaustion was your fault, like you just weren't built right, like everyone else got some instruction manual for how to exist in the world, and yours got lost somewhere between the trophies on the shelf and the silence at the dinner table. But here's what nobody told you. The way you move through life right now, the anxiety that lives just under your skin, the feeling that you're never quite enough no matter how much you accomplish, that didn't come from nowhere. It came from them. Picture this. You got an A-, not a fail, not even a bad grade, an A-. And instead of feeling proud, your stomach dropped, because you already knew what the conversation at home was going to sound like. Maybe it wasn't anger. Maybe it was just that look, that slight pause before good job that told you everything you needed to know. And you learned, quietly, privately, in a way you couldn't even articulate as a kid, that good was never quite good enough. That moment, that small, almost invisible moment, that's where a lot of this started. And by the end of this, you're going to understand something that might change the way you see yourself entirely. Because the patterns you're carrying right now, the perfectionism, the people-pleasing, the low-grade hum of anxiety that never fully goes away, they make complete sense. You just haven't had anyone explain them to you properly yet. Here's the first thing you need to understand. You became an expert at reading people before you were old enough to realize that was unusual. When your parent walked through the door, you knew within seconds what kind of night it was going to be. Not from what they said, from how they set down their keys, from the half-second pause before they smiled, from the specific tone they used when they said your name. You learned to scan a room the way other people scroll a phone, automatically, constantly, looking for information that might matter. And here's what's wild about that. You probably still do it. You walk into a meeting and you already know who's tense. You send a text and immediately analyze the response time, the word choice, the punctuation, or the lack of it. You don't just hear what people say, you hear what shifted in their voice when they said it. Most people call that overthinking. Psychologists call it hypervigilance. But here's the reframe nobody gives you. You're not paranoid. You're trained. You developed a genuinely sophisticated emotional intelligence because your early environment required it. The problem is, you're using a survival skill in situations that aren't actually dangerous anymore, and your nervous system doesn't know the difference. Which brings us to something that might sting a little. If you were raised by overachieving parents, there's a specific flavor of loneliness that you probably know intimately. It's not the loneliness of being left out. It's the loneliness of being seen, but not fully, of having parents who were present, who cared, who sacrificed. And yet somehow you still grew up feeling like the emotional part of you was a little bit inconvenient. Because high-achieving parents often operate in a world of metrics, results, progress, external markers that tell you whether you're on track. And feelings, messy, unproductive, unquantifiable feelings, don't fit neatly into that framework. So maybe your sadness got reframed as sensitivity, your anxiety got reframed as weakness, your need for reassurance got treated like a problem to solve rather than a human thing to sit with. You weren't taught that your emotions were information. You were taught, mostly through silence and subtle signals, that your emotions were obstacles. And so you did what any smart, adaptable kid does. You learned to manage them alone. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because what you built in response to that environment, it's genuinely impressive. You are probably someone who works harder than almost anyone you know. Not because you love the grind, but because somewhere deep down, effort feels like protection. If I just do enough, achieve enough, become enough, maybe then I'll finally feel like I can exhale. There's research suggesting that children of high-achieving parents often internalize external standards so thoroughly they lose the ability to tell the difference between what they actually want and what they believe they're supposed to want. The goal stops being fulfillment. The goal becomes performance. And the cruel irony, you're often very good at performing. You get the grades, the promotions, the validation, but none of it lands the way you thought it would, because you weren't chasing the thing itself. You were chasing the feeling underneath it, the feeling of finally being enough. And that feeling is a moving target when someone else set the coordinates. Here's the contradiction that probably lives in your chest right now. You are simultaneously someone who pushes yourself relentlessly and someone who's absolutely exhausted by that pushing. You can hold impossibly high standards for yourself while being genuinely compassionate toward other people who fall short of theirs. You can want connection desperately while also keeping people at a careful distance, because intimacy feels risky when you've learned that love is sometimes conditional on performance. You probably struggle to celebrate yourself, not because you're not aware of your accomplishments, but because the moment you relax into feeling good about something, some part of you gets nervous. Like the pride itself is dangerous. Like settling into satisfaction means you'll stop pushing, and stopping means you'll lose whatever ground you've gained. That's not a character flaw. That's a nervous system that learned to treat comfort as a warning sign. And here's what I really want you to sit with. You may have grown up in a home with every external advantage. Good schools, high expectations, parents who were relentlessly focused on your future. And you might feel strange admitting that any of it hurt, because it doesn't look like hurt from the outside. There were no obvious villains. Nobody meant to make you feel like a project instead of a person. Most overachieving parents are doing the most loving thing they know how to do. They're trying to prepare you for a world that they know can be brutal. They're handing you tools. The problem is, the toolbox sometimes doesn't include the most important one: how to feel okay about yourself when you're not producing anything. And so, you grew up believing, not consciously, but in the quiet operating system of your self-worth, that your value is tied to your output, that rest is laziness, that vulnerability is weakness, that needing things from other people is a burden. You weren't raised to be broken. You were raised to be excellent. But somewhere in the pursuit of excellent, the ordinary miracle of just being you got a little bit lost. So, what do you actually do with this? You start by recognizing that the standards you hold yourself to, the ones that never feel fully satisfied, the ones that move the moment you reach them, those aren't yours. They were handed to you before you were old enough to question them. And you get to decide, now, as an adult with your own brain and your own life, which ones you actually want to keep. You start letting yourself be bad at things without it meaning something about your worth. You start noticing when you're working from genuine desire versus working from fear of what happens if you stop. You start, slowly, imperfectly, learning that you don't have to earn your place in a room. You were allowed to be there before you accomplished a single thing. The exhaustion you've been carrying, it was never weakness. It was the cost of maintaining a self-concept that was built for someone else's approval. And the moment you understand that, really understand it, not just intellectually, but in your body, something shifts. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly. The way the air changes right before a storm finally breaks. You were never too much. You were just never given enough room to simply be. If something in this video made you feel unexpectedly seen, there's a reason for that. And that reason goes even deeper in this next video right here. It's about why people who grew up having to be strong end up struggling most with asking for help. And it might answer questions about yourself you didn't even know you were asking.